Americans were much happier in the Depression and World War II than they are today. The depression rates and suicide rates are much higher today. No depression, no World War, and Americans are considerably less happy today.
Okay. I have a theory about this that I feel like is a very Dennis Prager theory, and I said it on my show the other day, Timeless. It fascinates me how there are so many Americans today who view themselves as victims, and they have been through nothing.
Right.
And meanwhile, real victims,
yes.
Those in the Depression, those in World War II, right now, victims of terrible atrocities all around the world, they don't view themselves as victims. And the main person I think of with regard to this is Alexei Navalny, who, as we all know, recently died. And was recently probably killed. That's right. Thank you. That's a much, much more accurate way of saying it. He was murdered by the Kremlin. But I did this whole segment on Timeless about this guy had such humor up until the day he died. Literally the day before he died, there's a video of him in a cell with handcuffs, and he's making some joke, and it's not an act. You can really see his mirth. He's making a joke to the judge, and he goes, Mr. Judge, I was hoping that you could wire transfer some of your money into my account because I'm not doing particularly well financially in here. Like he was always kind of sticking it to them. And at his funeral, he requested that Terminator 2, the music from that movie, be played, which is it was his favorite movie. And I just love that guy because not only was he was full of life. He was full of life, and he was filled with humor. And his enemies are full of death. Well, what I said was Alexei Navalny teaches us that humor is a weapon. They could take everything from him, his family, his freedom, his dignity, but they could not take away his spirit. And that was his weapon against them. It was the ultimate FU to the Russian regime. Anyway, my point about victimhood is, again, this, how does someone like Alexei Navalny not view himself as a victim, but then, the average American college student goes to pieces and thinks that they have been through unimaginable trauma because they were microaggressed? And the answer is, in a way, it's kind of a luxury to view yourself as a victim. True victims can't really view themselves as victims because then they will just slide down a hole of despair. And you know who really hammered that home for me? My best friend in the world, Mahtab, who is the son of Bengali immigrants. Both of his parents died. He raises his 12-year-old sister. He was an orphan before he turned 20. And he is the most happy-go-lucky, great person I've ever met. You would never know what he's been through. And I asked him once, recently, I said, how do you do this? How do you not just lie on the couch and sit in a fetal position and cry after all that you've been through? And his answer to me was, I didn't have a choice. That's exactly right. I don't have a choice. I have to be there for my sister, and I have to be, my life has to go on. I can't view myself as a victim. Right. It's a luxury to be able to do. That's excellent. You're always batting. Today you're really on fire. Really? Yeah. I don't think I was. I think it's the green dress. You think this is green? I think this is gray. Okay, so you're. I hope my wife doesn't watch this episode. Why? Because she's convinced I have color blindness. I'm convinced I have color blindness. Green and gray. Sean, is her dress green or gray? Gray. Boy, I really see it as green. I'm a little colorblind. That's fascinating. I get greens and blues confused. That's really gray? Yes. I don't see any. I will admit, I see a little bit of green in here. It's all I see is green. It's very fascinating. Anyway, this victim thing. It's everything. A woman called my show. You know how few calls I remember? And I've had tens of thousands, right? But here is one of the maybe 10 that I remember in 40 years. Woman calls me on the Happiness Hour. I even remember from where? Brooklyn. Oh, no, it wasn't Brooklyn. It was from the Philadelphia area. She called up, Dennis, I got to just tell you this.
I am, my parents, my father, what was it? I think it worked that way. Or my mother. Let's just say father. My father was, my mother was a Holocaust survivor. My father is American born. He's the depressed one, and my mother is the happy one. She lost her whole family in the Holocaust. She's the happy one. She's the happy parent. The guy who lost nobody is moody.
Well, it's because when you have something terrible happen to you, you have two roads in front of you. You can either send in your resignation letter to life.
That's right.
Or you can keep going forward. And if you choose the latter road of continuing forward, you cannot view yourself as a victim. You don't have that luxury. Even if you are a victim, you have to think of yourself in different terms.
So in light of everything we're saying, and in light of my point about much fewer suicides during the Depression than today, so here you know I've asked this question, but now it has more legitimacy. I have asked on the air, is it a blessing
to
have a happy childhood? To which people will go, to you nuts? Because it's a blessing to have a happy childhood. Now, it's no blessing to be abused. Okay, it's a curse. It's a total curse. But a childhood without misery may not be a blessing.
I mean, I think in all of the right ways, I had a great childhood. My parents are the most loving, secure, people ever. But I was utterly miserable for years of my life with swimming. Years. And there were times when
I'll never forget that you cried in your goggles.
I did. It was horrible. I hated it. I hated it so much. And it was like torture for me. I just hated it. And there were also times when I was, our whole family was miserable because of what was going on with my sister Gina and the terrible care that she was facing. But you know what? I look back on those things, especially the swimming. I'm so grateful.
Wow.
I am so grateful that I was miserable for so many years swimming and I cried into my goggles. It has made the rest of life, and especially uncomfortable or difficult situations, nothing. Nothing. And it's also made, having that really disciplined, rigid childhood too, for me, has made working hard not hard, if that makes sense. Working hard is a feature, not an effort.
Here's my parallel. Through high school, I went to a yeshiva, which is an advanced Orthodox Jewish school. You have half the day in Hebrew, religious subjects, half the day in English, secular subjects. Mm-hmm. So literally double the number of hours, double the curriculum, double the work. When I went to college, and it would be 2, maybe 3 hours a day, I thought, they got to be kidding.
I know.
I thought of college as a 4-year vacation. I'm not joking.
I know you're not.
Which after high school it was.
Right, yes. Oh, well, can you imagine? When I was in college and 3 p.m. would roll around and I didn't have to dive into a pool, I remember thinking, this is the life. This is the best thing in the world.
Yeah, I didn't have to dive into a pool. I had the equivalent. But yes, so my question, if you have this easy childhood, maybe easy is better than happy. If you have this easy childhood, that's not a blessing. You don't build antibodies.